So first up on our list is Great Western Trail.
The designer is Alexander Pfister. The artist is Alexander Pfister and Andreas Resch. The publisher is eggertspiele and 16 others.
I didn't know he designed and was the artist. He's both?
Well, he has a credit for it.
Interesting. All right. So Great Western Trail is the game about being an actually historical cowboy where you take cows and to sell
deliver them.
Yeah, deliver
Kansas.
them to Kansas City. So the game, I'm not going to go over all the rules. I'll give you an idea of what's going on, then we'll discuss specifics if we need to. There's a board in the middle of the table, just like every board game, but on this board, you're going to cross from the bottom right to the top left. The top left is Kansas City, and between you are a ton of empty spaces, and some of them have tiles or starting tiles. So you skip over anything as you move that is blank and only go to the spot that has a tile. And as you play the game, players are going to be building things and putting them in those spots. So to get across the map, it takes more and more spaces because you're going to run into more and more other players' tiles or even your tiles, etc. Each way you go has a path, so you kind of can do forks in the road and decide which way you want to go. Sometimes there's a bunch of hazards that you might go through. Sometimes there's not. Mostly it's just paying money to the bank. What you're going to be doing, though, is the game has this light deck building aspect to it where you're building a deck of cattle cards, right? Cattle card? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A deck of cattle cards, and they're of different colors and values.
Well, they're breeds, but... Yeah.
They're different breeds, yeah. But what you're trying to do is once you get to Kansas City, then you get to reveal the hand that you have currently, and you sell them all, and you get money. There are some stipulations. You only get the money for each different breed, so you can't sell 2 green cards and get both of them. You only get it for 1. So you want to get there with a bunch of unique cards, basically. On your turn, it's pretty simple. You have a move action that happens first, where you have to move up to so many spaces. You start with 3 spaces, and kind of like games like Terra Mystica, you have a player board that has all these discs on it. And as you do stuff, you get to remove those discs, which will also power up your different, parts of your turn. So you can remove discs that will power up how far you can move on a turn. You can also remove discs that will power up how big your hand size is, etc. And so after you've moved, you will do all the actions of the space that you're on, which will typically be good actions. Sometimes if you land on other players' tiles because you didn't have a choice, you don't really get to do a whole lot. There's these auxiliary actions that you can do, and those are also on your player board, and you have to power those up as well. So some of them aren't even unlocked at the beginning, and you can also unlock a second of each. That way, when you go on certain spaces, you can do the action twice, essentially. And at the very end of your turn, you're going to refill back up to your hand size. Typically, you're going to lose cards, though, because when you go and do the action of the tile that you land on, it's going to require you to maybe, or not require you, but it's going to say, like, maybe get rid of a specific breed of like a brown, which is a 5, I believe, 4. I don't remember now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a 4. But maybe get rid of the brown card and you get some bonus money or whatever. And then there are certain tiles that will allow you to buy new cattle. There's basically a display of cattle cards that are available to anybody. So it's like a market. That market gets refreshed during certain parts of the game. There's other actions that will allow you to, like I said, generate money, or you can also move your train. So at the top of the board, there's this train that's going to move from left to right, essentially, and it's going to move past these different cities that you can kind of do like this little turn off to get into. And you get to, you can put your discs from your board onto these different cities, which is basically putting a train master there. You also have to put a guy there as well, but that's not really that important right now. And that's another way to get your disc off your board. When you finally do make it to Kansas City and you sell the cows in your hand, there's another track above the train track that will allow you to, depending on how much value you have, you get to put a disc up there. And it's basically all the cities of the game from left to right. And so if you sell like 15 value, you get to put, or 16 value or whatever, you could put a disc up there on the 16 value. But if you sold, next time you sold 18 value, you can put it on the 18 one. And some of these cities actually have requirements that will give you bonus victory points if you have a disc on the left and right in those cities.
Or even negative victory points if
it's too
the lower
low.
ones.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so if you get to Kansas City and you have a ton of the same cow, for instance, you only get to sell one of them, and now you have to put it on the lowest city, which, you're right, will give you negative victory points, and that's not very good. So you do want to end up getting to Kansas City with good stuff to get past the hump of losing victory points and get into the realm of being able to complete these like little sets to get victory points from them. 18, I think, was the highest one. You can put as many tokens there as you want, and each one ends up being, 9 or 8?
Yeah, something.
Yeah, it's a pretty good high score. On top of this, once you get to Kansas City, there are these 5 steps that you go through, and 3 of the steps are putting these different occupation guys, like jobs like a cowboy and a train
Teepees and
architect. What was those 3? The people?
The cowboys, architect, and the train master.
Yeah, I think a train master or something like that, or engineer.
Mm-hmm.
You get to put those on this job market board that's on the left, and as you're going around on the different tiles and you do actions, sometimes you can buy the people that are on there. And on your player board, there's these 3 tracks that you can put those different people on, and as it fills up, it works kind of in reverse. So when you cover up a special action, that will trigger and happen. But also, as you get so many of the same type of person, you'll get bonus victory points at the end of the game. The game's going to keep going until that job market gets full. And then at that point, everybody has one more turn, and then you just count up a bunch of victory points and stuff at the end, and whoever's the most is the winner. So hopefully it gives you a quick overview of what to expect. The game isn't really that difficult, although there is a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm.
It took us like an hour and 5 minutes to explain it.
Right.
How much of that, let me ask, I haven't played this game.
Yeah.
How much of that is the symbols and the iconography?
The symbols aren't too bad.
No, it wasn't too bad.
Okay.
There's just a lot of components in the game. There's a lot of there's a lot of aspects that you need to learn. It's like you have the deck building, you have the moving, you have the train,
and you have to balance
and
each of them.
Not necessarily.
Ideally.
Maybe ideally. I mean, well, going into some strategies in the game, there is, I guess, some main strategies you can go for.
According to the internet,
one that I went for.
Yeah, Eric went for the cattle strategy because all the cattle cards are worth points in your deck, and that's one of the scoring at the end of the game. That is by far the easiest one to identify.
Yeah, I just looked at it. I was like, I'm going to go all cowboys.
Every time I buy these, are worth points.
Yeah. It sounds like what cowboys should be doing.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the easiest one, I think, to go after. As far as I know, the was it the architect one they said was like one of the best one?
Mm-hmm. It says it's not as easy to implement, but it's a little bit rewarding if you're able to do it correctly and do it well.
Yeah.
Probably depending on because you get to decide where you're going to place it on this map.
Yeah.
And depending on where you place it, it's going to cause other people not only to spend more time getting past it because it's another trek on the trail to Kansas City, but depending on the building as well, they might have to pay you as well every time they pass it.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder how this one will be for me because I could see where I could like it because of the cows and
oh yeah, you like cows.
And but also just these different parts of it. I kind of worry about will it feel like Wreck Raiders a bit where I like this part of the game, but then this whole other part of the game is just irritating.
Just well, on this game you can be a cowboy and rustle up all these cows and do pretty well. So it's like Wreck Raiders. I felt like that one you really needed to do a little bit of everything.
Right.
You can
this
do
doesn't
more
force
of
you
something.
to do that.
No, I think this one you can,
No, I think
work.
you actually might hurt yourself by doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you need to. It's better to focus.
Right. That's how I feel anyway in our limited play. But
how much of the deck building?
There's
aspect?
not
really.
Very, very light deck building.
It's very light.
Okay.
It's basically you're getting some cows, which are giving you victory points. So you want the larger numbered cows because every time you put them in your deck is giving you victory points. But you're also selling these cows once you get to Kansas City, and the more you're selling, you're gonna get more victory points.
Yeah, and at the end of your turn, you don't even discard your hand. And so what you're trying to do is land on enough spaces between here and Kansas to get rid of the duplicates that you have,
or maybe even low ones,
or
if
low
you have enough
value
cards.
ones, right? And then
You're
draw
just
new
making the
ones.
best hand.
Right, and then whoa, I got some good stuff, and then you just beeline it.
Okay, so it's like almost like a poker thing where you just try to get the best hand.
Correct. Yeah, you're trying to get the best hand before you get to Kansas City, but you need good cards, and sometimes you have to get rid of good cards in order to activate the actions on the spaces.
Yeah.
But you can, like, some of those actions are optional anyway, so if you don't have it or you don't want to get rid of it, you don't have to do it.
So you only travel once to Kansas City.
No,
Oh, no,
you
that's like
in the book
Chutes and ladders.
Yeah.
you go back down, you start over, and you go back down.
Yeah.
You start
Okay.
over. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the book said you will go about 5 to 7 times.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. So traveling isn't as, I guess, irritating as it can be in Marco Polo, for example.
No.
Travel is not irritating in Marco Polo.
It is. It's really expensive.
Right. Yeah. It
this-
is. So
This can be because other players can put house or buildings down, and the buildings will have either a green or a black hand. Depending on the number of players you're playing, those are different penalties that you have to pay.
mhm.
And so if you move through other people's buildings, you have to pay them the
it
basically the toll.
It does give you
Okay.
a big difference in feeling between Marco Polo traveling wise, because in Marco Polo you have to say get camels and whatnot to make this trek or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
In this, you're always going to be able to move.
Okay.
Yeah,
even-
nothing stops
Right.
it doesn't hinder you.
Even if you don't have enough money, which actually is a downside for me. So I feel like, hey, you land on my house, you got to pay. But in this game, if you don't have enough money or you don't have money, you don't have to pay once you go past
Yeah.
someone's house.
Which
Okay.
Or building.
ironically, maybe this game has been talked to death, so I don't think we're saying anything that's probably new opinions or whatever. Although
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but I didn't really watch a lot of videos
I didn't
about
either.
Great Western Trail, so
Mhm.
I don't know if anybody else has said this, but this is a designer version of Monopoly. Dude, it has a
see
lot of
some.
similarities.
All right.
You
Oh,
basically,
man.
if the game was like a square and you ran around, you
Mhm.
really do pass go. I mean, you pass go
Oh, yeah,
and
you
you
get
sell your
paid.
cattle and you get paid.
You come back down. You can land on your properties.
Yeah.
Well, if you land on your properties, you get to
You do the actions and
you
stuff.
get a better benefit.
Yeah.
But you move unlike Monopoly where you have to land on somebody else's thing, if you move through their stuff, you have to pay them rent, basically.
Mhm.
But it's always your choice in this one. It's not like
No, it's
Monopoly where you just, randomly, that's what happened to me.
Right.
right,
Right.
right.
So sometimes there's a bunch of choices when you're moving along the path that
Yeah.
you can go left or right.
Yeah.
But you have to go along that path. So
and also you have, you can move up to 3 or you can move up to 4 or 5,
Yeah.
depending on how many of these chips that you increase your movement
Okay.
by. But you can decide to only go up 1, to the next building,
Well,
or you
yeah,
can go up 3 buildings.
but
Yeah.
I mean, it's on a path, so you eventually have to go over their buildings if you chose that path.
And is
Yeah,
that the
if you-
only point of interaction in the game?
Other than first come first serve type of stuff.
Oh yeah,
It's a
Mhm.
very Euro when it comes to that player interaction. There's a lot of interaction, but it's like indirect,
Yeah.
passive aggressive.
The worker
Well, I
placements.
kind of needed that spot.
Yeah.
Mhm. And if someone's on that spot, you still can go to that spot as well. So
Yeah.
there's
Well, I mean, like
What?
I place my building there.
oh right,
Like you can't hinder each other by moving. Like if I stop on a space, you can move onto that space, you can move through that space or whatever. But if I place a building there, then only one building per space.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I might get a pretty optimal spot because maybe I saved up, because you can't build any building at any point. You have to get the architects to be able to build it. And as you build the buildings, you can't even get enough architects to build some of the higher buildings that you have.
the
You know,
highest.
That is one thing I forgot about in this setup.
Mhm.
Everybody has 10 buildings, and there's 10 cardboard buildings, but they're double-sided, so there's 20 buildings in total. One person randomly is supposed to shuffle them all up, and then everybody else puts theirs on the same side. So you
Mhm.
all have the same
Oh.
20 buildings, but every game you play has different buildings.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
Actually, I forgot about that. That sounds awesome.
Yes. We played the standard setup where we played just side A of all
Right.
the tiles.
Mhm.
But side B has a lot more, a lot different interaction, or a lot different abilities and stuff.
Mhm.
And that also might have something to do with some of the buildings propel certain strategies as well,
Sure.
because maybe that you might be able to move your train like 5 spaces,
Right.
which is one of them. So that's a really cool part of it, and the fact that you need architects to build it. Well, what I was saying is you need architects to build the buildings, but you can't get enough architects to build the higher up buildings, so you have to blow up your other building and build on top of it, like you
Mhm.
upgrade it.
Mhm.
And the point is, you might do that and take a space that's a really high trafficked area, because those 7 starting buildings are also randomized. We didn't play it that way either. We played it the base
Right.
setup. But if you randomize it and there's like a really good path to get to a specific starting building, like to buy cattle, for instance, you could put your toll building in front of it or whatever.
Right.
And then
'Cause
you're
they
gonna
always
get-
need money before they, go buy the cattle.
Yeah, so like there's some strategy in where to build and when to build, and maybe going after that spot first. But
Mhm.
it's still not really like take that as in a bam, I just fireballed your cattle.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
But
Oh.
overall, what'd you think about it?
No, I
I mean, well,
ended
first
up
off, did this interest you at all? Like, are you interested more that we've talked about it, or less, or what?
I'm more interested. I've been interested in this one, and I've just.
I know
not-
you don't like longer games. I know.
Yeah,
this
that's
one
what's
was,
held me back.
This might have been 4 hours, I think, for us.
What?
Uh,
Well,
As-
if you include I think it was
can
like
look at
just
it.
like 3 hours and 15 or something of actual gameplay, but this was a 3-player game too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
an hour a person is pretty long.
It's a pretty long game.
Yeah. Okay. It was 3 hours and 4 minutes at
Yeah.
3 players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like an hour a player.
Yeah.
Now
so-
we could probably speed that up, but I mean,
and that was our first time through
Sure.
it, so it would get speed up a little bit.
And if I like the game, then I'm okay with that. You know?
Yeah.
I'll play
Mhm.
a long game of Orleans or something like that.
Yeah.
So this could be one I think that could be a hit for me. I
it's
would like to
it's
try it.
interesting because I think it verged on it could end up becoming repetitive in the same game, but then the game ended.
hmm
And so
Okay.
for it to be 3 hours and me say that's awesome, because you are doing the same thing over and over. You're really just moving 3 spaces, doing the action, refilling your hand. That's
Mhm.
literally all you're doing.
Yeah.
But just the idea of where you need to go next and how you should go there, and you're looking at there's so many decisions and stuff, and then
Mhm.
by the time you get back around, new buildings are there. So you're like, oh, now what's the new path to take?
Okay.
And there's these hazards that you can pick up and stuff. You have to
Well, there's these contract cards that come out
Yeah.
that you can pick up, and once you get them in your hand, you can use them to give you a certain benefit. But if you do so, you put it down in front of you, and you have to complete that objective by the end of the game, or you're going to get negative points.
Yeah.
However, you
That's
can
Tim's
pick it up.
favorite thing.
Yeah. Negative
However,
points.
this is phenomenal.
You can keep it in your deck and not use it, and then you don't have to complete it by the end of the game, and you won't get those negative points.
Okay.
And so it's like you can do that one special ability from it, but you take the possibility of getting negative points, or you can choose not to and have it clog up your deck every once in a while
Mhm.
and not have to worry about if you complete it. And
Right.
so it's like, that's awesome. Like
That-
in Ticket to Ride, you don't have a choice. You're either getting full points or negative full points.
Right. Yeah.
And in this, it kind of gives you a choice. It's like you can commit, but if you commit, there's a possible penalty. If you
Yeah.
don't commit, the penalty is it's clogging your deck up,
Yeah.
because
No,
it is a deck builder.
That is more interesting.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah. And also like the progression of the game, where as you play through it, you're getting better actions, able to do more stuff, go further.
That's
So,
important. yeah.
It does feel like your player board is a character, and you're like developing your character as you play.
Right.
So it's got that.
Okay.
It's got a lot of cool stuff.
And lovely cows. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm gutted that I wasn't able to play with you guys. So next time, definitely.
Oh yeah. I'm looking forward to playing again for sure.
Cool.
Mhm.
Oh, hey, what did you think? Final thoughts, or
Final thoughts, yeah.
or at least for this episode anyway.
There was a couple of things I was a little bit iffy on, like auxiliary actions. I don't typically like those type of actions where my turn this turn's not very good because I wasn't able to get to one of my own buildings. I didn't really like the if you don't have the money, don't worry about it kind of thing.
Yeah, you should be forced into taking loans or something.
I feel right. But there was a little nitpick things, but overall I did enjoy my experience. And I'm looking forward to playing it again, where the layout is going to be different, and you might have different buildings. So every time
Yeah.
you play it is going to give you a different feeling.
Agreed. I pretty much agree with everything that you said.
Mm.
Like it's a really fun game. I'm glad that the deck building aspect is pretty light.
It is.
And George said it. He nailed it when he said it's like more of a poker hand.
Mhm.
So you get into the end, you want to have like the best hand, not just a bunch of the same stuff.
Right.
And that
So-
really does kind of
So there's a
set
lot
the
of
pace for you.
buildings that allow you to do that, or you can take auxiliary actions where you grab a card and discard a card. But there's buildings that allow you to do that. There's also buildings that allow you to spend these certain type of cows to get money as
Yeah.
you travel through.
Yeah, it's a really, really awesome game.
Would you put it at the top of Pfister's collection? Is it his best game? A lot of people really like it.
Tell me
But-
a couple other
Tell
Pfister
me a
games.
couple other-
Okay, he has Isle of Skye, which I love,
Alice Guy.
Oh yeah, Alice Scott's really. You remember that one?
Mhm.
Yeah.
and he has
I say it's better than Alice Guy.
Broom
I
Service.
do like it. Oh,
which
I just
also
played
love.
Room Service not that long ago. I did like it a lot.
Really am
Why
into
is
those
this
games.
game going for $130 on Amazon?
What's that?
Great
Oh.
Western Trail, sell it.
Oh, yeah.
I'll wait until they come out with one with a better cover.
I didn't mind the cover.
It's
I know a lot of
terrible.
people say that the cover's really bad or it's
Put a cow on the cover.
No, I don't want a cow.
Oh
on
yeah,
there.
he did do Oh My Goods. I liked Oh My Goods quite a
was
bit.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got Mombasa.
He
I haven't
made
played Mombasa yet.
so he did make Maracaibo, which is a new one, and they basically say it's like an ocean version or something of Great Western Trail mixed with something else. I can't remember.
Talk George
Yeah.
into it right there.
I think-
Sea cows.
I
It's
th-
manatees.
You know
have
what?
to-
They called it Great Western Mombasa. Is what they called it.
Oh,
Because
okay.
he made Mombasa as well. It's like
Mhm.
those two games put together.
I'd rather have sea cows.
Sea Cows. Tybor the Builder, Blackout Hong Kong, which I did want to play, but
Haven't got a chance to play that one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Expedition to Newdale. That's
No.
right.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm looking forward to that. So
That is going to be the Oh My Goods with a story. Like
with
not-
the board.
No, they already have a story with
Yeah.
the board. Yeah, I am looking forward to that too.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably say this is out of the games that he's designed, or at least those are the ones that are notable. He's designed more than that.
Right.
I would say that this is probably my favorite one of his so far. But Oh My Goods is pretty good. So I mean, it is hard to compare that vast of a game to like a
Mhm.
smaller card game.
Right, that's true. And
But that smaller card game has a lot of replayability.
Oh, yeah.
So
All right,
cool.
and that's out of the three. I would probably like. I'd probably rather play Room Service or Isle of Skye.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, so
We'll get to it.
I'm definitely interested.
We're gonna
Awesome.
we've sold him on a long game. All right. I think our job here is done.
Right.
All right, anyway, that is Great Western Trail.